Welcome to Foreignness and Friendship, a series of podcasts. We present a number of bonus tracks connected to our radio show. You can listen to conversations with artists and activists, reports from festivals and other larger events, essays, reviews, poetry and letters. We see ourselves as part of a non-binary rebellion with the intention of creating a language and a human condition beyond race, ethnicity, gender, sex and class. Tear down these walls, dismantle the statues of power, and meet the other with an open spirit. We are in an era where textile, clay and wood seem to play a new and more dominant role in contemporary art. Therefore, we have chosen to publish this a little bit unusual conversation, where we are in conversation with two different galleries presenting textile and clay artworks respectively. This conversation does not focus on a person, but rather on a question. These materials have had an important and glorious presence throughout time in what we today perceive as craft. The split between craft and contemporary art, mainly driven and created by Western thinking, is of course an artificial division, but it is nevertheless an existing structure. In the recent decade, it is striking to observe that materials which previously mostly were used in craft has moved in the center of contemporary art. In larger international exhibitions, these materials play an important role in artworks, not only as part of a tendency for mixed media artworks, but also independently. In this conversation, we meet two different galleries, which are not galleries in the conventional sense, but should rather be understood as art projects. One of them is based in Cape Town, called Art Forms. They are solely focused on clay. They do not have a physical space, but run an exhibition and event program. The owner of Art Forms, Olivia Barrell, has just published a huge book called Clay Forms, with artists working with clay in various forms and expressions. The other art project is called No Man's Art Gallery, based in Amsterdam, but they work with a pop-up gallery structure located in various places of the world. The founding director, Emily Coster, tells us that the locations are chosen partly intuitive or by a hunch of where they might encounter something exciting. We are in the last day of Cape Town Art Fair and visiting the gallery Art Forms, and the gallerist Olivia Barrell is here to speak to us about ceramics and the gallery. Please, if you can introduce yourself and the gallery.
Hi, yes, thanks so much. I think that this is our inaugural exhibition. My name is Olivia Barrell, and I'm an art historian, and I always studied ceramics, and I specialized in Chinese ceramics when I lived in France for many years. And when I moved back to South Africa a few years ago, I was taken by the level of artists working with clay in South Africa. And no one had as of yet written a book on sculptural clay in the country. So it follows on. Our publication was published at the end of 2023 called Clay Forms, which is 30 contemporary South African artists all working with clay. And really what I wanted to showcase was the multiplicity of this medium. So clay that is fired. Many of the forms are ceramic, but a lot are unfired. There's Belinda Blino that works with wild pigments. There's Liddell Mo who works with raw earth. So I wanted to really show the expansion of what the medium could be. and Art Forms is a gallery, but I'm not that interested in the word as such and any of the connotations that carries, because I really wanted to create a new format art gallery, something that was a little bit more considered, a little bit more literary, that allowed the audience an entrance into viewing and understanding the works. And I believe that sculpture should always be accompanied by words, because it's important to explain why sculpture is special or important. So at Art Forms, this is our inaugural exhibition at Investec Cape Town Art Fair, and I must say the response has been amazing. It's an incredible response, and I think it's partly because there's a lot of text vinyl up on the wall. People can actually read about 6 of the exhibiting artists, and it allows the audience to actually access the works. So this is really what we do here at Art Forms, which I think is a refreshing break to some of the previous conventional ways of galleries in the country.
Do you agree with the notion that ceramics has kind of, as a material has become kind of more important in the, you could say, the center of contemporary art compared to earlier, where it maybe more was considered as crafts? If that distinction at all makes sense.
I would say that it hasn't become the center of contemporary South African art, but I would definitely say that clay has started to reshape the landscape of contemporary South African art. I think that we're a country that's extremely dynamic, and that our contemporary art scene doesn't purely need to be represented by two-dimensional painted form. And so there's a new language that's been emerging, that there are artists that have been, and what I tried to showcase in my book and with a lot of the exhibiting artists, I mean, these are artists that have been working with clay for many decades. So we've got Catherine Glenday, who's our porcelain master. She was born in the 1960s. She's almost spent 50 years in relationship with porcelain. Liddell Moe was born in the early 70s. She's been working as a sculptor for many decades. Henny Meyer is one of our very pioneering ceramic artists who's been experimenting with form and clay since the 1980s. So what I wanted to show was actually clay has always been there. So it's always been a very interesting sideline vein within South African art history. And I felt very excited about this vein and how little it had been documented. And that's why I was very excited to put the book together. And I must say the response to it has been amazing, not because it's a new vein, but because it's a tradition that's somehow come to the light, but has actually always been there.
Of course it has always been there, but maybe the issue in our time can be that if the material in the center of contemporary art or in the space of contemporary art changes, then maybe our conception of contemporary art also changes. And when we talk about the interest you meet here at the fair, maybe it also has something to do with the acceptance of ceramics as an art form, or it has something to do with the material in itself, because it's a very different from oil on canvas, which is because it is in the room, and you maybe also feel closer to this material because it's something. Yeah, I'm just thinking that the tactileness, does this have any influence, do you think, on how we perceive contemporary art?
I think it's a very interesting question, and I think that what I wrote in my editor's note is that somehow in the art world there's often felt like there have been rules, and that ceramics or clay has been confined within definitions, be it function, be it ceramic art. But what I wrote in my editor's note was that, and the book is called Clay Forms for the very reason that ceramic forms would leave out many artists that don't fire their sculptures, because ceramic is purely clay when fired. And I wanted to showcase that actually with clay and with art, there are no rules. Maybe previously it felt like there has been, but I think that maybe we're in a phase where actually art has become less structured in a way, more accessible, more open-ended, and maybe that's why we're seeing more of an interest in sculpture, because there's sort of an open-mindedness to many different art forms. And really what we wanted to showcase at Art Forms were all the other types of art forms other than paint on canvas.
Because if you look at what you are exhibiting here, then there's examples of what we could call traditional porcelain in a row of very high, slim figures. There's also something which is very similar, to a painting, so to speak, but it is clay on canvas, on cloth, and then there's kind of a collage piece also where it's like dropping stones from the sky, maybe who fall down the wall, and on the other side we have kind of different kind of sculptures which look like sculptures, so to speak. So there is this kind of a big
versatility.
And I remember when I talked to you the other day, you were talking about kind of this plasticness of the clay, which has then a very broad range of ways of expressing itself.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to showcase for our inaugural exhibition. And I call it an exhibition because art forms would actually love to put shows together that are very considered and are themed much closer to what a museum is than a conventional gallery. But this exhibition at Art Fair was very considered, and I wanted to showcase an artist that represented one of the facets of this wonderful medium. So in the front we have got terracotta, which has been fired in fire. They've been fired in a pit. And then I wanted to move into porcelain, which is fired in a kiln, which is sort of the highest form of ceramics as such. And then we've got Belinda Blino, whose works in the booth very much look like paintings, but actually what they are wild pigments on canvas, on cloth. And Belinda Blino buries the cloth in the earth, sometimes for 6 months, sometimes for a year, and then she pulls it out and she marks it with various forms of natural clays. I mean, Belinda Blino is an exceptionally interesting artist. She's pioneering, not just locally, but globally, a new genre within clay called wild clay, which is completely unprocessed, unrefined clay. And then Liddell Moe, opposite from us, is three-dimensional form. It's sculpted carvings of what she calls angels or Madonna-like figures that are made in concrete and earth mixed together. So they're earth-based, it's an earth-based installation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It is quite late in Cape Town Art Fair, the last day, almost evening, so everybody's a bit exhausted maybe, but we're still trying to be here. And we are now at the No Man's Art Gallery, which is an Amsterdam-based gallery, and we have one of the gallerists here, Emily Costa, and she will introduce herself and tell us a little bit about the gallery or the art project, which is maybe a more precise description of it.
My name is Emily Koster. I am one of the directors of No Man's Art Gallery. We have a basis in Amsterdam with 2 gallery spaces that are permanent, but we also organize pop-up galleries all over the world, where you can compare it with a residency, but for gallerists, our gallery team travels to another country, sets up a temporary gallery space there, and starts inviting local artists to work with the gallery, and really immerse ourselves also in the framework that the artists use locally. And we've done that now at 10 destinations all over the world, and our most recent destination was Mexico City. And in Mexico City, we met María Sosa. María Sosa is the artist we're currently presenting at the Cape Town Art Fair in a solo presentation at the Tomorrow Today section. Yeah, showing a wide variety of techniques, I would say. We're showing ceramics, we're showing video works, but we're also showing a lot of textile pieces made with indigenous and historical weaving techniques, with batik, but also we see a piece that has intestines sewn onto a cotton fabric, but also a punch needle type technique or a textile collage. So quite a few different techniques that María Sosa is using to tell her stories.
So the way you work is that you kind of have a feeling of a specific place in the world, and then you go there and interact locally, as far as I understood, with artists. So it's kind of a moving organism, which makes it a little bit different from a conventional gallery. Is this correctly understood, that this is how you're doing? And it's not really. It is not an analytic process. It's maybe more in a little bit of an intuitive process. That is how the art projects kind of move around the world.
Yeah, very much so. I would say intuitive is really the right approach to that. We don't have a set geographical focus or a plan of which countries to go to next, or like we may have a short list, but in the end, our decision to travel to a country and to organize a pop-up gallery there is always intuitive. There's part of it is fed by a curiosity, but part of it also by very small conversations that might not have anything to do with art, that just spark a thought and a curiosity as to what type of art is created and what are the artists working with in terms of materials, but also political framework or philosophical framework or just a visual language.
So these works here just happens to be using textile. It is not because that you are specifically drawn to textile.
I might be specifically drawn to textile. I love textile art, although I've never seen it as a singular category. We work with another textile artist, Afra Eisma, and her work is completely different from what we're showing here of María Sosa. But we're not focused on textile art, no, not at all. But there's such a variety also within textile art that there's no single answer to that, I guess.
Do you think it's correct to say that we live in a time where textile kind of play a bigger role in contemporary art, or have moved itself into the center of contemporary art? I'm thinking about that textile somehow comes from craft. At some point there was a split between craft and contemporary art, and textile was kind of very often left in the craft dimension, while maybe now there's a lot of examples of that textile move more to the center of contemporary art also. What do you think about such an argument or statement? Does it have any value?
I think for sure textile has taken a more prominent space in the commercial art world over the past years. And specifically, if you look at the past 8 to 10 years, there's been a massive increase in what we see in the commercial sector for textile art. It's also a response. We get a lot when we're showing textile. It's great to see so much textile. We're seeing so much more textile than we're used to. A lot of people who said, I'm so glad to see this because I made this also when I was a young artist, but there was no space for it. And I see that now there is. So there's definitely, I wouldn't be able to tell you from a scientific point of view, but anecdotal for sure, more textile in the contemporary, commercial contemporary art scene. But of course it's always been there and it's been created, but it might not have been properly paid for.
What does it mean, or which kind of consequence does it have? Why is it happening right now? And does it do anything with our conception or perception of contemporary art? Because this material is different from iron, it is different from ceramics, it is different from, specifically very different from oil on canvas.
Yes, so twofold, I guess. I think why textile might have taken a more prominent stage might also have to do with the increase of female artists in the established contemporary art scene, because it is traditionally, or is ascribed to be an art form that is used more by women than by men, I guess. So it might have, I don't know, but it might have to do something with that now that we are trying to close the gender gap, all of us, that this is a byproduct of that we see this form being used more. There's also a couple of artists like Afra Eisma, for example, that mentioned the increase in textile art might also have to do with, the COVID times and the fact that we were lacking a certain intimacy or tactility, and that textile art can have maybe a placebo touch, or you have a proximity to it. You feel like you can touch it. You feel like you can get close to it. When you touch it, it's often soft. It's returned. How do you say it? Pushes back. So. It's responsive, so there might be something in that also that causes the most recent increase over the past few years. I wonder what it does to the perception of contemporary art in general. It would be interesting to see if it causes some form of approach, a closeness to an artwork, the feeling that you may touch it. I'm not saying touch all the textile artworks you see at art fairs. Please don't ask first. But it might also, in that sense, close a bit of a gap where you feel you can get closer to the work more than you would maybe to a painting.
There's also, I think, that often you have the feeling that it goes out in the room. Somehow it gets so it's spatial in another way than oil and paint would be. And maybe it's also moving a little bit because it has this way.
There's also so many different textures, and the different textures and the unpredictability of the surface that you're looking at, I think, has a large attraction to it. Whereas there's when you look at paintings, there's a lot of different techniques, of course, and different structures that you can create on a painting. But I think there's more when you work with textile, just because there's so much textile that you can even start doing that with. I think that also really helps the attraction of the medium.
In this work you have here, which is a very long on the wall, there's also, other than it is textile in different colors, there's also some kind of storytelling in the piecing. That if you go closer to it, you have kind of symbols of plants and animals
and monsters,
and
yes.
People who also play an important role in the art piece.
Yes, this piece is titled Los monstruos no vivían aquí. The monsters didn't live here. It's I want to come a bit closer to it because it makes it more natural for me to speak about it. You see, what I'm going to describe what we're seeing. So this is a large piece, and when I say large, I'm talking in meters, about 5.5 meters wide and 3 meters high, almost. And it's a soft fabric, a smooth surface, but it's patchwork in terms of color blocks, and these colors are rosa, light purple, pinkish tones, reddish tones, brownish tones. And these tones are important in the work because the work also speaks about Belize, the country of Belize, and how it wasn't occupied by the Spanish like Mexico was, where the artist is from, because they couldn't find gold, but the British in the end did colonize and introduce extractivism and slavery in the country, because they found the material that is responsible for the colors that we see in this piece. I found the translation of this. It's called logwood. It has a very difficult Latin name. There's logwood from Belize and logwood from Brazil, and they apparently give different shades. So this tapestry tells that story, but also uses imagery drawn from and inspired by this Codex of Monsters that was a popular book in Western Europe during the time of this colonization. That has to do with the demonization, I guess, of the Latin countries and the people there, and that contribute to the justification of the colonization and introducing and subjecting the local people to the negative results of all of the actions. This is a very storytelling piece, I would say, yes. And María Sosa uses a lot of storytelling elements in her work. There's a lot of old knowledge, old myths, old religious stories or histories that she refers to. A lot of it have been forgotten or overlooked or demonized, like what I just spoke about. And much of her work is also focused on not so much fixing, but maybe in a way restoring what has been destroyed, but also giving it a new value, but also with the mission of preserving. And she also says the reason that I can use this technique is because many people before me fought to preserve this technique, and she also feels it as a responsibility to do the same. So in this piece, for example, you'll see a traditional weaving technique used with little pieces of tepalcates, which is also a traditional ceramic, found ceramic that she interweaves into the tapestry.
So there seems to be also a very, very strong connection to heritage somehow, eh?
Yes.
Which maybe also is somehow characteristic for the material, maybe that textile has often, in textile there has often been created these storytelling. It has not only been a textile to be worn, but also a story to be told.
Yeah, some I guess more figuratively and some more abstract. So I guess in Maria's work there's a lot of abstract storytelling. But if you look a bit further on the fair and you look at the work of Tanja Petersen, I don't know if you've seen that, I'm just going to point you around the corner, just there. That's Tanja Petersen. It's embroidery, and it's a lot of storytelling, also stories that should not get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's it's way more figurative, beautifully done also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have listened to a bonus track by Foreignness and Friendship. If you have built up an appetite for more, then you can follow us on thewhiteafricanblogspot.com and walk in our footsteps by stepping into In My Footstep WordPress.com. We broadcast new episodes of our radio show every first Tuesday of the month, available on your preferred platforms.